Good morning, YouTubers, and welcome once again to the southern wing of the Stink Bug Works. Today I'm getting ready to go to the pond on Monday. It's Saturday, and I have a couple other things I need to work on tomorrow. But I thought I'd show you the latest on the JetStepper and the latest here on the Redbird. I am trying yet another motor on the JetStepper. And the motor I used before was an outrunner of a KV of about 3,500. And actually it seemed to work pretty well, but I'm having a hard time finding that motor again. So remember, part of the goal of this exercise is it has to be cheap. Cheap, cheap, cheap. Remember, cheap. And it has to be readily available. So I found this little Surpass outrunner. It's a short can, and this one is about 2,300 kV. And I'm hoping it'll have the torque to spin this 28 millimeter prop. Eventually, I want the final design. We're going to talk about the final design in a bit. I want the final design to use this Gropner prop and a 2 millimeter drive shaft. Why? Because it's cheap. It's the cheapest thing I could find, and it's readily available. So cheap and readily available, because remember, these things can only go so fast before they become flying saucers and not boats. So the secret is to find a power system that's adequate, that's not over the top, and is cheap. So this Surpass motor wasn't too bad. I think it was under 20 bucks. But so I'm going to give this a run. And the only reason I'm going to give this motor a run as opposed to the next one I'm going to show you is the motor mount that was in here, pretty much from the old outrunner that was in here the last run, pretty much lined up with everything here, so it wasn't much to just drop this motor in its place. What I think I'm going to finally wind up going with as a motor is this thing. This is the ubiquitous A2208/8-turn 2600 kV motor. These things can be found on eBay for $5 and change. That's cheap. That's what I'm looking for. But the drive end is off the rotating can, so the mounting has to be off the back. And so I'll have to bust out this mount before putting this in. So this weekend, Monday, couple of days from now, I'll run this motor. The following weekend, I'll run this. I'm thinking this may be the motor of choice. And with the 2 millimeter shaft I'm thinking of, to make it really easy, it would be best if I could remove the motor and drive shaft all at once from this direction, leaving the coupler on. So that would mean I would need to have a mount similar to this that somehow would lock in from this end and come out. Maybe a block with some screws on it here, maybe like a little laser cut thing with a wedge that went in there. I'll come up with some sort of clever design for putting the motor in place, pulling it out. So that's my thinking on that. I increased the speed control up to an 18 amp speed control just because it was melting wires before. So we'll give this a try. I don't expect too much of a problem. The KV may be too low. So I'm thinking this with the 26 millimeter prop. I really wanted to run it in prototype 5 here, but I set the drive shaft really low because I was using an in-runner motor. I set the drive shaft low so I could get this angle real flat and suck this up a little higher. You know, each prototype I'm trying out different things. So I may go for I probably will. Most likely go for this 26 millimeter prop that Steve sells at OSE because it's cheap. 2 millimeter shafts, you can get them from TFL for $1 and change. You can get them at small drive parts for $4 or $5, and you have to have a M2 thread to thread them, or an M2 die to thread them, but that's not a problem for me. So that's that. Eventually, what I'd like to do with this thing is I'd like to just produce a bunch of them and have guys out there racing these things that are cheap. I mean, all I'd make would be the foam, and I'd spec out, this motor, this drive shaft, this propeller, and you're on your own from there on out. But we'll give this one a test and see how it goes. The prop's a little deep, so it's going to run with its butt up in the air like a stink bug. But anyway, I'm thinking the motor I just threw on the floor will be the final choice. Now, let's talk about the Redbird here. The Redbird, I was looking around H&M's website, and I saw a built one that had a turn fin like this. And I said, oh, that looks about right. And so I built a turn fin that was about that size. Well, you've seen from the spinning out in the turns that maybe that's not the best thing. So I have temporarily attached this huge turn fin that, it's one of those readily available commercial ones that actually had a bend in it, but I flattened it out. So I'm just going to test this. This will be a test version, and if it works, if it helps, I'll make a nice carbon fiber one using the upper part of this as a pattern. And I'm thinking, because of the way it enters the water and the amount of control I need, whereas this one had this swooping, leading edge, I'm thinking I might want to have a square fin in there so I get the maximum amount of fin in the water as the boat starts to turn, because this thing doesn't really lean much more than that. That's its full lean. So I want a good bit of turn fin in the water. One thing I noticed too from the first run where I was using the K series prop, the 1.4 pitch, it would chine walk a whole bunch. When I went to the 1.6 pitch S series prop, which was a little thinner, it reduced that a whole bunch. I'm now using a 30 millimeter where the others were 29. I'm now using a 30 millimeter CNC prop that I got from Steve at OSE, and I'm hoping that will reduce chine walk even further, and I'm thinking this will be a good prop for this boat. Since I'm not doing different tasks with the boat, the speed run spot today and the park pond tomorrow, I'm going to just leave one prop. I'm going to find a prop that works and leave that prop on it. If you're going to different spots and doing different tasks, absolutely, you must experiment with props. But I'm just going to use, this is just a fun runner, not out to set any records. So there you go. Another thing about this thing, somebody asked me, when you get these from H&M, the hatch is a real thin casting, and it sits kind of deep in the opening that they made. And I'm sure Oliver, when he designed this thing, planned this, that I just put carbon fiber toe around here to build it up to where it would be flush with the surface. And as an added benefit, it makes my hatch real stiff and prevents warpage. Now, warpage isn't so bad when you have an epoxy glass structure as this, but when you're using fiberglass resin, that stuff tends to warp over time. And as we get into future projects, you'll see more and more of that from the Stink Bug Works here. Right now, my focus is on getting this thing handling so I can put it in the box and be done with it. I want to get this thing going. Remember, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is the runoff, and there's not too many people doing this. I know Steve and Vinny kind of butted his head up against a wall, but come on, Vinny, just a couple pieces of foam. I mean, look, you can make these things by the dozen. And, you bash them around and you make another one. That's part of the fun of this thing is, they're cheap and you can bash them around and we'll go run this and see, and just imagine like 5 or 6 of them smacking into each other. It'll be hilarious. Anyway, I think I've said enough for this time. Until next time, jet out.